Luca. Bueno. Piñu. Bueno. Piñu. Bueno. Piñu.
Naughty Dog, specifically Neil Druckmann, failed Joe Miller. The Last of Us Part 1 is one of my favorite games of all time. The story and the characters and the world was beautifully crafted in what you would first believe to be your typical zombie apocalypse story, but instead tells an amazing story about grief and the will to live. In the end of that game, we see Joe full of rage, trying to save the one girl that has filled that hole that he has had since he lost his actual daughter years ago, only now for Ellie to be that close to being killed for the quote-unquote sake of the cure to save the world. And from the words of the man himself, Neil Druckmann, he said,
I was even reluctant about whether to talk about my interpretation of that ending because people have such different interpretation. And I say it's my interpretation because it's not necessarily the ending. If you have a different interpretation that works with the facts that are in the story, then that's valid. This is just the way, this was the original intention, but doesn't mean, intention is nothing. It's whatever you kind of make of the story that matters.
So basically what I'm hearing is that it's up to the player while they're playing the first game in that last mission whether or not Joe is doing the right or wrong thing, or even if Ellie should forgive him or not. Right? I'ma hold you to that, Neil. Before I get to why I think Neil Druckmann failed Joe Miller's character, I just want to clarify some things before you guys get to the comments saying, you don't get The Last of Us Part 2, you're so biased. I actually enjoyed The Last of Us Part 2. I think it's a beautifully looking, ambitious game that fails in pacing and some writing issues, specifically in the execution of some of the deaths, and way too many stupid or convenient to be true moments that take you out of the experience, especially if you played the first game and loved it. Abby could have been great, but she's just bogged down to feeling like they're forcing you to like this new character who just killed the main character of the first game that we all loved by petting doggies or giving her the best weapons of the damn game, rather than properly placing some scenes that are later on in the game earlier on in the game to make you sympathize with her more and earlier on. Now, so with that out of the way, let me start my rant onto why I think the almighty Neil has failed Joe Miller. Let's start with the first thick reason: out of character. If you've been on the internet the last couple months, you know that The Last of Us show has been widely praised by mass audiences, including me. But with me loving the show and how perfectly they captured the feeling of the first game, it got me heavily thinking how the second game ruined his character, and how the next season of the show, which has been greenlit already, will ruin his TV counterpart as well. Maybe. Let's start with the path leading up to Joe's eventual death, the very start of it that actively put him on that path: saving Abby. During these scenes where they first encounter each other, until that golf swing, they completely wrote Joe and Tommy to be practically idiots, or at least somewhat out of character from the last game. In the first game, Tommy and Joe, which is confirmed that they did whatever it means to survive during the apocalypse, but when it comes to a random woman who had a hole infected on top of her when they first found her, they don't check for bites or scratches or anything, or even try to keep her at a distance. Look at this.
You know, that's been one of the big things I've seen of just like, he would have never trusted the Abby's people. He never would have done this. He never would have said that, right? Like, he's been living the good life for 4 years in a community trying to, you know, be a normal person. Is that fair?
That's the thing that's hard with making a sequel is like, with the first game, there's no expectations. People don't know Joel and Ellie. And now some people think they know them better than we know them, right? I want to just address that criticism because I've seen a lot of like, how come Joel and Tommy trust these people? And it's like, it's not an ambush. They're not walking into an ambush. It actually, but also again, it's the fact that these guys are not hunters. Like Joel's looking for hunters. These are regular people.
Okay, Joe is the man who left a family on the road right at the start of the apocalypse, and also didn't even stop his car for a random guy with an injury, quote unquote, because he instantly knew he was faking it. You're telling me they didn't realize 10 of Abby's friends were all armed and very suspicious looking? I mean, come on, look at the way this fucking guy closes the door right after they all walk in. That doesn't look suspicious to you? And Tommy's just like, hey, our new friends, I'm Tommy and this is my brother Joe Miller. You had to write both of them as stupid or oblivious in this whole hour of the game just for the sake of surprising the audience with a big death. Oh, but they had their guard down, especially if Joe, after that talk with Elliot later on in the game, they look like normal people too. No one in this apocalypse is a normal person. Neil, they're all survivors. Don't these look like regular people? Nope, they're cannibal murderers. A group of 10 or so people all armed and with military patches are not regular people. Joe will never have his guard down or going around instantly telling people his name, because literally 5 years ago he slaughtered a whole group of fireflies to try and save Ellie. They weren't the only fireflies and he probably knows that.
And people surprise us, right? People change, people evolve, people all the time. So it's like when the Joel that you see in the beginning of Last of Us Part 2, I mean, after the opening guitar scene, it's like that's 4 years of having lived in this community that's safe. 4 years of like, they meet people on the outside all the time and they bring them in. We have all these notes and stuff that they trust them.
But what was Joe and Tommy's job at this settlement? They're scavengers, patrollers, killing any infected or bandits that may cause their nice settlement harm. He's not just going around eating cheesecake and dancing and having a fucking blast. Hell, the one time we do see Joe in a dance setting is when he instantly threatens a guy who offends Ellie. He's not like, hey guys, why don't we all just calm down? I'm Joe Miller, that guy that killed all those fireflies long ago. No, bro. No, because no matter what, he will always have his guard up. Yes, they might have brought back a couple people here and there who were actually safe to bring back, and it would have made sense if they just invited Abby at first when she was alone and in danger. But after seeing her whole group armed to the teeth, this should have been Joe and Tommy's red flag. But nope, you've heard it all before, but putting all of this together is crazy to think about how they butcher my guy. You know how else they failed my boy? Painting Joe as the bad guy. Remember what I said earlier about what Neil stated when the first game came out?
And I say it's my interpretation because it's not necessarily the ending. If you have a different interpretation that works with the facts that are in the story, then that's valid. Intention is nothing. It's whatever you kind of make of the story that matters.
Now here he is making a game where the theme portrays him as him doing that wrong thing, and every scene of him is either getting shit on by Ellie or some other character, or getting shit on. Where was that ambiguity, Neil? The underlying themes, Neil. Ambiguity is so important, and the first game did that perfectly. But in this, it's killing and revenge is bad, forgiveness is good, except for Abby though. She's perfect. So I'm here to defend my boy. He did nothing wrong. He didn't rob Ellie of that choice. The fireflies robbed her of that choice, and Joe was forced to save the girl he saw as a daughter. But why doesn't Joe tell Ellie any of this in the second game? Because Neil wrote it in a way to make him seem like he's an idiot to make him look worse. In defense of Joe, if we look back at the first game, the Fireflies probably would have kept the carrot to themselves, thinking that they're the only ones who should have it after their experience with Fedra in the beginning of the game. What's also funny is they definitely wouldn't have given it to everyone, especially anyone Fedra. As we see in the show, Fireflies are rebellious towards them, and so is this Karen's group in the show. And look what happened after they successfully rebelled against them. You think these guys were the good guys? There are no good guys in this world, Neil. It's either bad guys, survivors, and the dead. Also, because it's a fungal infection, there is no way to probably actually make a cure, let alone from one immune girl. What's crazy too is that the new show showed that there is no possible way that there could be a cure regardless of immunity. It doesn't make sense why that's a defense on why Joe was doing the wrong thing when it wasn't even guaranteed. One little thing that I noticed as well is a change in Marlene's character. In the original first game, Marlene's character is ruthless. She knows what has to be done for the good of the world, and this one little girl is one roadblock stopping that. But in the second game, she's more hesitant in those flashbacks, more sentimental, damn near crying until Abby walks in, and she probably felt forced to say yes because of what Abby said. If that was the case and she cared about Ellie and Joe so much, why not tell Ellie what you were doing before you killed her? Why not allow Joe to see her and say goodbye? Something he couldn't do to his first daughter that died in the beginning of the apocalypse. Maybe if you did, you all wouldn't even be dead. Remember, I'm fine with her in the events of the first game because that's her established character and I liked her that way. But part 2 ruins her character by changing her up for the sake of manipulating the audience. This retcon is just their way of showing that they were more hesitant and had a heart before them killing a little girl for a little to no chance of a cure to make Joe look like more of a bad guy. And if you say, well, Joe is a bad guy, in that case, Ellie is a bad person, Abby is a bad person, Tommy is a bad person, they all killed people to survive and save or avenge the ones they love. But to Neil, I feel like he believes Joe is the villain of the first game and the second game. Maybe he was leaning more towards that what he did in the first game is wrong when he made it, but when he saw the reception of how people felt about the character and defended his actions, he said, nope, he was actually wrong, idiots. Look at this second game, he was clearly wrong. He hurt people. Listen, Neil, he was no villain in the first game. He was human, nothing else. Looking at these interviews, he feels proud of killing him, I feel like it's his greatest accomplishment ever. Hey Neil, if you have to constantly explain how the story is meant to be portrayed or how to correctly feel about the characters and their deaths that you forced into the game, you didn't make an amazing, perfect story with perfect writing. He seems so pretentious when he speaks about this game, saying how he knew people would hate it because they don't understand it. I understand it, and I still believe the writing and choices made in the story, not all of them, are poor. Challenging your audience doesn't mean purposely upsetting them. If The Last of Us was made by a game studio like Rockstar or CD Projekt Red, he would have been respected and killed in a way that was respectful towards the amazing character that he was. But nope, because Naughty Dog likes killing their main characters and disrespecting them. Hey, did you guys know that there was another writer that wrote the first game with Neil named Bruce Straley? He actually left Naughty Dog and gaming entirely during the development of Last of Us Part 2 and blamed it on new direction and burnout. Sure. Let's not act like he didn't like the direction of the game when they were making it, and Neil probably forced him to go with it, but he didn't and quit. Isn't that funny? It's just a theory though. Don't quote me on that. Alright guys, my rant is finally done. I just love Joel Miller's character and the first game entirely. And while I did like the second game, I feel like they disrespected Joel's character for the sake of telling an ambitious story. Well, nothing we could do about it now, right? Actually, now with the show being out and Neil being one of the main people making the show, he's allowed to change a few things. He clearly did in the few episodes that we saw, like the Bill and Frank episode. So there is a way of doing something about Joe's death in season 2 or 3 of the show. I'm fine with Joel dying. Just make it feel earned and authentic. Don't make Joel and Tommy act like idiots. My suggestion for the next 2 seasons of the show is to make the second season everything up until Ellie heads to get revenge for Joel's death. Flesh out those first few hours of the second game. There's a lot of potential to do with that, and it will make his death feel more earned by the end of the season. End it in a horrific but more emotional death because it felt earned. Also introduce Abby earlier on in the season to build her up with a secondary storyline showing her heading to Jackson. Alright guys, I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to like, comment your thoughts on how you feel about his death and how Neil handled it. Subscribe by hitting that thick ass red button, and I'll see your asses in the next video.
To leave that stuff fake so you can you become a storyteller in a way. And I think in games we usually fall into the trap of explaining too much and showing too much, and we don't have to. It's like, what's the least we need to tell to portray this story, and then tell nothing more.
No, he can't read my poker face. She's got me like nobody. Can't read my, no, he can't read my poker face. She's got me like nobody. Pop, poker face, pop, poker face. Na, 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 na. Pop, poker face, pop, poker